I spent 8 hours making dumplings for my daughter's engagement dinner. 8 hours standing in my kitchen on Waverly Street, the same kitchen where I taught Emily to fold wonton wrappers when she was 7, back when she still looked at me like I knew something worth knowing. My hands cramped by the 5th dozen. The dough had to be rolled exactly right, thin enough to see your fingers through, but thick enough to hold the filling. Pork and cabbage and ginger, chopped so fine it became paste under my knife. My mother taught me in Taipei 60 years ago. I taught Emily. She never made them for Carlos. The reservation at Four Seas was for 7 o'clock. I arrived at 6:30 with 2 bamboo steamers wrapped in kitchen towels, still warm. The restaurant smelled like it always did. Roasted duck and sesame oil and that specific sweetness of hoisin sauce meeting fire. Red lanterns hung from the ceiling. Our table was in the back corner, round, with the lazy Susan already set with small plates and teacups. Emily got there at 7:15. Carlos came in behind her, one hand on her lower back, steering. He wore a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. His hair was gelled back. He smiled at me with all his teeth and said, "Margaret, you look lovely. Thank you so much for coming." I said, "Of course. Congratulations." Emily hugged me. She smelled like perfume I didn't recognize, something sharp and expensive. Her engagement ring caught the light, a diamond so big it looked like it would hurt her hand. She'd lost weight. Her collarbone stuck out like a wire hanger under her silk blouse. "Mom, you didn't have to bring food," she said, looking at the steamers. "They have a full menu here. I wanted to," I said. "I made your favorite, pork and cabbage." Carlos pulled out a chair for Emily. Then he sat down himself. He didn't pull out my chair. I sat down across from them and unwrapped the steamers. The dumplings were still perfect, steaming. The pleats I'd folded by hand, holding firm. Grace arrived 10 minutes later. My granddaughter, 16 years old and already taller than her mother. She slid into the seat next to me and squeezed my hand under the table. "Hi, Grandma," she whispered. "Those smell amazing." Carlos ordered in English. Peking duck, salt and pepper shrimp, beef with snow peas. He didn't ask what anyone else wanted. When the waitress left, he leaned back in his chair and said, "So, Margaret, Emily tells me you used to teach languages. That must have been interesting." "It was," I said. 30 years. "What languages?" "Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish." "Huh," he said. He picked up his teacup, took a sip, put it down. "That's impressive. Most people can barely handle English, right?" Emily laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh you make when someone expects it. Patricia arrived late, of course. My sister, 2 years older, dressed like she was going to a country club even though she's never belonged to one in her life. She kissed Emily on both cheeks and ignored me. She sat down next to Carlos and said, "Traffic was terrible. You know how it is." Carlos smiled at her. "Of course. Thanks for making it, Patricia." She beamed. My sister, who hadn't called me in 4 months, who told me at Robert's funeral that I should sell the house because it was too much for a woman alone, beamed at my daughter's fiancé like he'd just given her a gift. The food came. I served the dumplings onto small plates and passed them around. Grace took 3, Emily took 1, Carlos took 2, but he didn't eat them right away. He cut into the Peking duck and served himself a large portion. Patricia did the same. Then Carlos picked up one of my dumplings with his chopsticks. He bit into it, chewed, swallowed. He turned to Emily and said something in Mandarin. "这真难吃. 它是不是放了皮肉? This is disgusting. Did she use bad pork?" Emily laughed again, that same fake laugh. She replied in Mandarin, 我不知道. 她总是做得太油腻. I don't know. She always makes them too greasy. My hands were folded in my lap. I didn't move. Carlos took another bite, then put his chopsticks down. He said in English, loud enough for the whole table, "Margaret, these are delicious. Really, you're so talented." I said, "Thank you." He leaned toward Emily and lowered his voice, but not enough. He said in Mandarin, 这个老母猪连我们在说什么都听不懂，真是个蠢货. This old sow doesn't even understand what we're saying. What a fool. Emily covered her mouth like she was coughing. Her shoulders shook. She was laughing. Patricia leaned in. "What's so funny?" "Nothing," Emily said in English. "Just an inside joke." Grace looked at me. Her eyes were dark and serious, Robert's eyes. She whispered, "Grandma, are you okay?" I nodded. I picked up my teacup. My hands didn't shake. I took a sip. The tea was too hot. It burned my tongue, but I didn't flinch. Carlos ate another dumpling. Then he pushed his plate away and said in Mandarin, 我真不敢相信他花了一整天做这些垃圾. I can't believe she spent all day making this garbage. 我知道, Emily said. I know. She glanced at me, then looked away quickly. 至少她很快就不会再烦我们了. At least she won't be bothering us much longer. 是啊, Carlos said. Yeah. He smiled at me across the table and said in English, Margaret, you really outdid yourself. These dumplings are wonderful. Emily's lucky to have a mom who cooks like this. I looked at him, at his smile, at the way his hand rested on Emily's shoulder, at the diamond ring he'd put on her finger, the ring that probably came from money he didn't have. I said, Thank you, Carlos. I'm glad you like them. Dinner lasted another hour. Carlos ordered wine, a bottle that cost $120 according to the menu. He toasted to family and new beginnings. Patricia raised her glass and said, To Emily and Carlos, you two are perfect together. Emily smiled. Grace stayed quiet beside me, picking at her rice. When the check came, Carlos made a show of reaching for it, but Emily grabbed it first. She handed over her credit card without looking at the total. I wanted to tell her that I'd seen the numbers. I wanted to tell her that $340 for one dinner was more than I spent on groceries in a month. But I didn't say anything. We stood up to leave. Carlos shook my hand. His palm was soft, no calluses, nothing like Robert's hands after 40 years of engineering work. He said, It was wonderful seeing you, Margaret. We should do this more often. I said, Yes, we should. Emily hugged me at the door. She whispered, Thanks for coming, Mom. It means a lot. I wanted to ask her why. Why she laughed when he called me a sow. Why she agreed when he called my dumplings garbage. Why she said I wouldn't be bothering them much longer. But I didn't ask. I walked to my car alone. The night air was cold, that specific February cold in San Francisco that gets into your bones, even through a coat. I sat in the driver's seat of my 12-year-old Honda and looked at the restaurant through the windshield. Emily and Carlos were standing on the sidewalk. He had his arm around her waist. She was laughing at something he said, her head tilted back, her hair catching the light from the street lamp. Patricia walked past them without saying goodbye to me. Grace came out last. She looked around, spotted my car, and walked over. She tapped on the window. I rolled it down. Grandma, she said, I'm sorry. For what? For them, for, I don't know, everything. I touched her cheek. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Can I come over this weekend? I miss your cooking. Of course, anytime. She hugged me through the window, then ran back to where Emily was calling her name. I drove home. The house on Waverly Street was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I'd left the porch light on, but the bulb had burned out. I unlocked the front door and stood in the entryway, listening to the silence. The clock on the wall ticked. The third step on the staircase creaked when the house settled. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. I walked into the kitchen. The counter was still covered in flour. I'd forgotten to wipe it down before I left. The rolling pin sat in the sink, waiting to be washed. I opened the refrigerator. There were leftovers from 3 days ago. Rice, bok choy, half a roasted chicken. I wasn't hungry. I sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where Emily did her homework. Where Robert read the newspaper every Sunday morning. Where I folded 10 dozen dumplings that my daughter's fiancé called garbage while smiling at my face. I understood every word he said. I've spoken Mandarin for 64 years. I taught it to college students for 3 decades. I can read classical poetry. I can translate technical documents. I can hear the difference between Beijing dialect and Taiwanese dialect in 3 syllables. And my daughter knows this. She sat across from him and laughed when he called me a sow. She agreed when he called my food garbage. She said I wouldn't be bothering them much longer. I sat at that table until midnight. The flower on the counter turned gray in the darkness. The clock kept ticking. And I didn't cry. I just sat there, thinking about what much longer meant. Emily called 6 days after the engagement dinner. It was a Thursday morning. I was watering the jasmine plant on my front porch, the one Robert planted in 2003. The phone rang inside. I almost didn't answer. "Mom," she said. Her voice was bright, rehearsed. "Carlos and I have news. We're moving up the wedding." I put down the watering can. "Moving it up? When?" "April 20th, 2 months from now." "That's very soon." "We know. But Carlos got this amazing opportunity with his import business, and we want to be married before he travels to Shanghai in May. It just makes sense, you know?" I didn't say what I was thinking. I said, "Congratulations. What can I do to help?" There was a pause, a long one. Then Emily said, "Actually, Mom, we've got it covered. Carlos hired a wedding planner. Everything's handled. We're keeping it small, just close family." "I see. You'll get your invitation in the mail. We're doing formal invitations even though it's rushed. Carlos wants everything to be elegant." "Of course," I said. After we hung up, I sat on the porch steps. The jasmine smelled sweet. A neighbor walked by with a dog. The mailman came at 11:30 like he always did. He handed me a stack of envelopes, a water bill, a grocery store flyer, a letter from my dentist about my next cleaning. No wedding invitation. I waited 3 weeks. Every day I checked the mail. Grace came over twice. She didn't mention the wedding. When I asked her about it, she looked at her shoes and said, "I think Mom's really stressed. Carlos keeps changing his mind about stuff." "Like what?" "Like who gets to sit where, who's in the wedding party. He didn't want me to be a bridesmaid at first because he said I'm too tall and it would look weird in photos." "What did your mother say?" Grace's jaw tightened. She said maybe he had a point. On March 15th, I drove to Emily's apartment in Pacific Heights. She'd moved there in January, right after Carlos proposed. The building was new, all glass and steel, with a doorman who looked at my Honda like it was leaking oil on his pristine driveway. Emily answered the door in yoga pants and a sweatshirt. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked surprised to see me. "Mom, hi, I wasn't expecting you." "I know. I should have called. Can I come in?" She hesitated. Then she stepped aside. The apartment was exactly how I'd imagined it. White walls, white furniture, no photos anywhere except one of Emily and Carlos on a beach, professionally taken. The kitchen was spotless, like no one had ever cooked in it. It smelled like that fake lavender, the kind that comes from a plug-in air freshener. "Do you want tea?" Emily asked. "No, thank you. I just wanted to talk about the wedding." She sat down on the white couch. I sat across from her in a white chair that was too firm to be comfortable. "What about it?" she said. "I never received my invitation." Emily looked at her hands. "Oh, that's weird. Maybe it got lost in the mail." "It's been 3 weeks. I'll check with the planner. She must have made a mistake." I waited. Emily didn't look at me. "Emily," I said, "am I invited to your wedding?" She looked up then. Her face was pale. "Of course you are. Don't be ridiculous." "Then why don't I have an invitation?" "I told you it probably got lost. I'll make sure you get another one." I stood up. "Okay." "Mom, don't be like this." "Like what?" "Upset? Dramatic. It's just an invitation. You're coming. That's all that matters." I wanted to ask her why she didn't just call me when she noticed I hadn't RSVP'd. I wanted to ask her why she hadn't mentioned the wedding at all when Grace visited. I wanted to ask her why Carlos mattered more than 38 years of me being her mother. Instead, I said, "You're right. I'll wait for the new invitation." I let myself out. When I got home, I checked the mail again. There was nothing. I went to the kitchen and made tea. Then I walked to the garbage bin outside and opened it. The invitation was there. It was in the trash, buried under coffee grounds and an empty yogurt container. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper, my name written in calligraphy, Margaret Chen. Inside was a card with embossed gold lettering. "Emily Chen and Carlos Rodriguez request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Someone had drawn a line through my name in black ink. Not a careful line, a slash, angry and quick. I stood there holding it. The paper smelled like garbage. My hands were shaking now, actually shaking, and I couldn't make them stop. I went inside. I put the invitation on the kitchen table. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called Patricia. She answered on the fourth ring. "Margaret, what is it?" "What?" "Did you get your invitation to Emily's wedding?" "Of course. Weeks ago. Why?" "Where are you sitting?" "Table 3, I think. Right near the front. Carlos was very sweet about it. He said family should be close to the couple." "I see. Why are you asking?" "No reason. I'll let you go." I hung up before she could ask anything else. That night, Grace called me. It was late, almost 11. She was whispering, "Grandma, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I heard them talking, Mom and Carlos, about the wedding." I waited. "Carlos said you're embarrassing. He said you dress like a refugee and you're going to make them look bad in front of his business partners. He said Mom should just not invite you." My throat felt tight. "What did your mother say?" Grace was quiet for a moment. Then, she said okay. "Okay?" She said okay. She said maybe it was better this way. That you'd probably be more comfortable at home anyway. I closed my eyes. "Thank you for telling me, Grace." "I'm sorry, Grandma. I don't know what's wrong with her. She's different now. She's like a different person." "It's not your fault. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart." After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen. The invitation was still on the table, my name crossed out like a mistake someone was correcting. I thought about the day Emily was born, how I held her in the hospital, counted her fingers, her toes, how Robert cried, actual tears, the only time I ever saw him cry. How we brought her home to this house and I stayed awake for 3 nights straight because I was terrified she'd stop breathing. I thought about every birthday cake I baked, every Halloween costume I sewed, every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every time she called me crying about a boy or a bad grade or a fight with a friend. I thought about Robert's funeral, how Emily stood next to me at the grave and held my hand while they lowered the casket. Then I thought about Carlos's voice. This old sow doesn't even understand what we're saying. And I thought about Emily laughing. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But it was midnight, and a call at midnight usually means something's wrong. "Margaret." It was Carlos. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "It's fine. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. Can you come by tomorrow? Around 2? "What's this about?" "Just some family business. Nothing to worry about. See you at 2. He hung up before I could answer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, the clock tick, the third step creak under weight that wasn't there. At 2 o'clock the next day, I drove to Emily's apartment. Carlos answered the door alone. "Margaret, come in." He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt. Casual, friendly. He gestured to the white couch. "Emily's at work," he said. "This won't take long." I sat down. He sat across from me, leaning forward, hands clasped. "I'll get right to the point," he said. "Emily and I have been talking about the future, about our life together, and we both feel it would be better if there was some distance between us and you." I didn't say anything. "It's nothing personal," he continued. "It's just that Emily needs space to build her own family now. You understand?" "No," I said. "I don't understand." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Well, to put it simply, we think it's time you stopped dropping by unannounced. Stopped calling so much. Emily's an adult. She doesn't need her mother hovering. I visit once a month. It feels like more." He leaned back. "Look, Margaret, I'm trying to be nice about this. Emily's too afraid to tell you herself, so I'm doing it. Back off." Then he said in Mandarin, his voice low and cold, "你这个老女人最好听话，否则你会失去一切. You'd better listen, old woman, or you'll lose everything." I looked at him, at his smile, at the confidence in his eyes. I said in English, "Is there anything else?" "No, that's it. I'm glad we understand each other." I stood up. "Thank you for your time, Carlos." I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when he said in Mandarin, 我等不及要卖掉他那东坡房子了. I can't wait to sell her decrepit house. I opened the door and walked out. In the car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel. They weren't shaking anymore. I drove home. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table with the crossed-out invitation in front of me, and I started making a plan. The wedding happened on April 20th. I wasn't there. Grace called me that morning. She was crying. Grandma, please come. I don't care what they said. You should be here. Sweetheart, it's okay. It's not okay. Mom keeps asking where you are. She's pretending like she expected you to come. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that Carlos uninvited you. She started crying and locked herself in the bathroom. I wanted to ask if Emily was crying because she felt guilty or because Carlos was angry, but I didn't. Grace, I need you to do something for me today. Stay close to your mother. Watch how Carlos treats her. And call me tonight. Will you do that? Yes. I love you, Grandma. I love you too. I spent the day cleaning my house. I scrubbed the kitchen floor. I organized the closet where I kept Robert's old jackets, the ones that still smelled like him even after 5 years. I dusted the photos on the mantle. Emily's first day of school, Emily's college graduation, Emily and Robert at her sweet 16. There were no photos of Carlos. At 6 o'clock, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. Patricia. I almost didn't open it, but I did. She was still wearing her wedding outfit, a lavender dress, pearls, heels. She looked me up and down. You missed a beautiful ceremony. I wasn't invited. Oh, stop being dramatic. Of course you were invited. You chose not to come. I didn't argue. There was no point. I'm not here to fight, Patricia said. I'm here because Emily asked me to talk to you. About what? She stepped inside without being asked. She walked to the living room and sat down on my couch like she owned it. Emily and Carlos need money for the honeymoon and to cover some wedding expenses. Carlos's business had a temporary setback. Nothing serious. But they're asking family to help. How much? $20,000. I stared at her. $20,000. It's a loan. They'll pay you back in 6 months. I don't have $20,000. Patricia looked around the room, at the furniture, at the walls, at the window that faced the street. You have this house. You could take a home equity loan. No. Margaret, don't be selfish. This is your daughter. My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding. Because you've been difficult. Carlos told me how you've been acting. Showing up unannounced. Calling at all hours. You're smothering her. I looked at my sister. At the pearls around her neck that I knew cost more than she could afford. At the way she sat in my house and called me selfish. Patricia, you need to leave. Fine. But when Emily asks why you won't help her, I'll make sure she knows the truth. That you care more about your precious house than your own daughter. She stood up and walked out. She didn't say goodbye. The next day, I checked my bank account online. My pension deposit had come through, $2,340. I paid my property tax, $100. I paid my utilities, $230. I paid for groceries and gas and the small things that add up. I had $840 left for the month. Then I saw it. A transfer out. $800 to an account I didn't recognize. I called the bank. The woman on the phone was polite and unhelpful. That's a recurring transfer, Mrs. Chen. Set up in February. I didn't authorize that. Let me check. Yes, it was authorized by Emily Chen Rodriguez. She has power of attorney on your account. My chest felt tight. Since when? Since February 14th. You signed the documents. I didn't remember signing anything. Then I did. Valentine's Day. Emily had come over with papers. She said it was for insurance purposes in case something happened to me. She said it was just a precaution. I said, cancel it. Cancel the power of attorney and the transfer. I'll need you to come in with identification and proof of, I'll be there in an hour. I drove to the bank. I brought my ID, my passport, my marriage certificate, everything I could find. The manager, a young man with a kind face, looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Chen, I can cancel the recurring transfer, but the power of attorney, your daughter would need to sign off on that too. She stole $800 from me. Technically, she had authorization to. I didn't know she was taking money. Cancel it. Now. He did, but the $800 was already gone. That night, Grace came over. She looked exhausted. She sat at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands. He yelled at her all night, she said. At the hotel. I could hear it through the wall. What was he saying? That she's weak, that she can't do anything right, that her family is useless. Grace looked up at me. Grandma, Mom gave him money. A lot of money. She emptied her savings account. $43,000. For what? But he said it was for his business, for the Shanghai trip. But I looked at his computer yesterday. He doesn't have a trip to Shanghai. He doesn't even have a business anymore. It's bankrupt. He filed for bankruptcy in January. I felt cold. Does Emily know? I don't think so. I think he's lying to her about everything. We sat in silence. The clock ticked. Outside, a car drove past. Grace, I said, I need you to find out how much Carlos owes. To who? Everything you can. Can you do that? She nodded. I'll try. And Grace, don't tell anyone, not even your mother, especially not your mother. Okay, Grandma. After she left, I sat at the table with my checkbook in front of me. I did the math. Without that $800 a month, I had exactly enough to cover my bills. Nothing extra, no buffer, no savings. If anything went wrong, a broken pipe, a car repair, a medical emergency, I would have nothing. I thought about calling Emily, asking her why she took my money without telling me, asking her why she gave Carlos $43,000 without asking questions. But I didn't call. I went to bed. I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle. I thought about Robert, about what he would say if he were here. He'd probably tell me to fight. He always told me to fight. But I was 64 years old. I was tired. I'd spent 40 years fighting. Fighting to learn English, fighting to get my teaching certificate, fighting to raise Emily alone while Robert worked 16-hour days. I didn't want to fight anymore, except I kept thinking about Carlos's voice. I can't wait to sell her decrepit house. And I kept thinking about Emily laughing. And I realized I wasn't done fighting yet. Grace came back 5 days later with a USB drive. I copied everything, she said. She was shaking. His laptop, his emails, his bank statements, everything. We sat at the kitchen table. I plugged the drive into my old laptop, the one Robert used for work before he died. The files loaded slowly. There were hundreds of them. Spreadsheets, PDFs, email chains. I started reading. Carlos owed $340,000, not to banks, to people. Names I recognized from Chinatown. Names associated with card rooms in Daly City, private poker games, high-stakes mahjong. He'd been gambling for 3 years. Small at first, then bigger, then desperate. The emails were worse. One from March. Carlos, this is your final warning. $85K by end of month or we come to your home. Another from April. Your wife's family has money. Figure it out. And one from February, the day after the engagement dinner. The old lady's house is worth almost $2 million. Get it? I read that line 3 times. Grace watched me. Grandma, what are we going to do? I need to make some phone calls. Can you keep this drive safe? Yes. And Grace, if Carlos asks you anything, if he suspects anything, you tell me immediately. She nodded. After she left, I sat with the laptop open. I looked at the numbers, the threats, the timeline. Carlos met Emily in October. He proposed in December. 2 months. He didn't love her. He needed her. And he needed my house. I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I wanted. David Wong, a former student of mine. He'd taken my Mandarin class in 1995. Now he was a private investigator in Oakland. Mrs. Chen, he said when he answered. It's been years. How are you? I need help, David. I need to hire you. What's going on? I told him everything. The wedding, the money, the gambling debts, the threats. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, send me what you have. I'll dig deeper. My rate is $150 an hour, but for you, I'll do $100. This will probably take about 35 hours of work. Can you afford $3,500? I looked at my bank account on the screen. I had $4,200 in savings, money I'd been keeping for emergencies. Yes, I said. I can afford it. I'll start today. Give me a week. I sent him the files from the USB drive. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I opened Robert's desk drawer. At the bottom, under old tax returns and insurance papers, was a small notebook, his handwriting, phone numbers, contacts from 40 years of working in San Francisco's tech industry. I found what I was looking for. 3 names, 3 people Carlos owed money to. I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the afternoon. I dialed the first number. A man answered in Cantonese. Wei? I responded in Mandarin. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm calling about Carlos Rodriguez. He owes you money. There was a pause. Who is this? His mother-in-law. I have information you might want. About his assets. About when you'll get paid. I'm listening. He has no assets. His business is bankrupt. His wife gave him $43,000 last month. He gambled it away in 2 weeks. He's planning to divorce her and disappear. How do you know this? Because I've been watching him. I have bank statements, emails, everything. Another pause, longer this time. Why are you telling me this? Because he's a liar, and liars shouldn't prosper. If you want your money, you need to act now, before he runs. He's planning to leave the country in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Yes. He told my daughter it's a business trip. It's not. He has a one-way ticket to Manila. I can send you proof. Send it. I hung up. My hands were steady. I called the second number, then the third. Same conversation, same information. By 5 o'clock, Carlos's creditors knew everything. David called me 6 days later. Mrs. Chen, I have news. Carlos's car was repossessed yesterday. His credit cards were frozen this morning. Someone filed a lawsuit against him. 3 someones, actually. That was fast. They're not messing around. These aren't bank loans. These are personal debts, the kind people break legs over. He paused. Did you have anything to do with this? I made some phone calls. Mrs. Chen. His voice was careful. These aren't good people. Neither is Carlos. Fair enough. I also found something else. Carlos has been trying to add his name to your house deed. He filed preliminary paperwork last month. It was rejected because he's not a co-owner and doesn't have your permission. But he tried. My chest went cold. Can he do that? Even through Emily? Not without your signature. But if something happened to you and Emily inherited, then yes. He'd have access. I thought about the power of attorney Emily signed, about how easy it had been for her to take $800 from my account. David, I need you to do one more thing. I need you to find out if Carlos has life insurance on me. Jesus, okay, give me 2 days. He called back in 1. He tried, David said. He applied for a $500,000 policy on you in March, listed himself as beneficiary. It was denied because you have to sign off on it, and obviously you didn't. But Mrs. Chen, the fact that he tried. I know. You need to be careful. Desperate people do desperate things. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen. The afternoon light came through the window, golden and warm. The jasmine plant on the porch was blooming. Everything looked normal, but nothing was normal anymore. My son-in-law had tried to take my house. He'd tried to take out life insurance on me. He'd married my daughter for money that didn't exist, and Emily had helped him. Maybe without knowing, maybe without understanding, but she'd helped him anyway. I opened my laptop. I attached David's report to an email. In the recipient field, I typed Emily's email address. Then I stopped. If I sent this now, Carlos would know. He'd know I'd been investigating. He'd know I understood Mandarin. He'd know everything. And he'd run. Or worse. I needed to wait. I needed the right moment. The moment when he couldn't run. When he couldn't lie. When everyone would see him for what he was. I deleted the draft. I would wait. But not for long. Grace's birthday was in 3 weeks, September 7th. Emily was planning a dinner at Four Seas, the same restaurant where this all started. Carlos would be there. Emily would be there. Patricia would be there. And I would be there too, whether they invited me or not. Grace turned 17 on September 7th. Emily texted me 4 days before. Grace wants you at her birthday dinner. Four Seas, Saturday 7 p.m. Please come. Not an apology, not an explanation, just a request. I replied, I'll be there. I spent those 4 days preparing. I practiced what I would say. I rehearsed the words in Mandarin, in English, in the silence of my kitchen at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I printed out David's report, all 43 pages. I put it in a manila folder and placed it in my purse. I bought a new dress, navy blue. Simple. I wanted to look like someone who couldn't be dismissed. On Saturday, I arrived at Four Seas at 6:45. Early. The same hostess was working. She recognized me and smiled. Mrs. Chen, so good to see you. Your family's table is ready. I walked to the back corner. The same round table, the same lazy Susan, the same red lanterns overhead. I sat down and waited. Grace arrived first. She saw me and her whole face lit up. She ran over and hugged me so hard I lost my breath. Grandma, you came. I wasn't sure you would. I promised, didn't I? She sat next to me and grabbed my hand under the table. Mom's going to be weird. Carlos too. Just warning you. I know. Grandma? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Are you going to do it? What we talked about. Yes. Good. She squeezed my hand. He deserves it. Emily and Carlos arrived at 7:05. Emily saw me and froze in the doorway. Carlos saw me and his jaw tightened, but they both walked over. Mom, Emily said. Her voice was too bright. I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you for inviting me. Carlos didn't say anything. He sat down across from me. He was thinner than he'd been in February. His suit was expensive, but it hung loose on his shoulders. There were circles under his eyes. Patricia arrived 10 minutes later. She kissed Grace on the cheek, nodded at me like I was a stranger, and sat down next to Carlos. Well, Patricia said, isn't this nice? The whole family together. Emily ordered for everyone. Too much food. Peking duck, walnut shrimp, kung pao chicken, clay pot rice. When it came, no one ate much except Grace. Carlos kept checking his phone. His leg bounced under the table. He looked like a man waiting for bad news. Emily kept glancing at me, then looking away. She'd lost more weight. Her wedding ring looked too big on her finger. So, Grace, Patricia said, 17. Are you excited about senior year? Grace shrugged. I guess. Any college plans yet? I'm thinking Berkeley, or maybe State, somewhere close to Grandma. Carlos looked up from his phone. You should think bigger than that. UCLA, Stanford. You're smart enough. Those schools cost money, Grace said quietly. Your parents will figure it out. Will they? Grace's voice had an edge. Because Mom gave you all her savings, and you gambled it away. The table went silent. Emily's face went pale. Grace, that's not... It is true, Mom. I've seen the bank statements. You gave him $43,000 in April. It's gone. All of it. Carlos stood up. Grace, you need to watch your mouth. Or what? Grace stood up too. You'll yell at me like you yell at Mom? You'll threaten me like you threatened Grandma? I never threatened anyone. 你说你要卖掉他的房子, Grace said in Mandarin. Her pronunciation was clumsy, but clear. You said you were going to sell her house. Carlos went very still. What did you just say? I said you told Mom you were going to sell Grandma's house. I heard you, in March. You thought I didn't understand because I don't speak Mandarin. But Grandma does. Every eye at the table turned to me. Emily's mouth opened. Mom doesn't speak Mandarin. She speaks Cantonese. I set down my teacup. I speak both. I also speak Spanish. I taught all 3 languages for 30 years. You know this, Emily. You used to sit in my classroom after school doing your homework while I taught evening classes. But you never. Emily's voice trailed off. I never corrected Carlos when he spoke Mandarin in front of me? I looked at him. No, I didn't. I wanted to hear what he would say when he thought I couldn't understand. Carlos sat down slowly. His face had gone gray. I continued. At your engagement dinner, you called me an old sow. You said I was stupid. You said my dumplings were garbage even though you ate 3 of them. Emily laughed. She agreed with you. Mom, I didn't mean, 你当然知道你在做什么, I said in Mandarin. You knew exactly what you were doing. Then I switched to English. You told him I was too greasy, too embarrassing, too much. You told him I wouldn't bother you much longer. Emily started crying. Patricia looked confused. And you, I turned to Carlos, told me to my face that Emily wanted distance, that I was smothering her, that I should back off. And then you said in Mandarin that I'd better listen or I'd lose everything. Margaret, Carlos started. 我等不及要卖掉她那东坡房子了, I quoted. I can't wait to sell her decrepit house. That's what you said. In February, at 4 C's, at this table. His eyes widened. I opened my purse and took out the manila folder. I placed it on the table. This is a report from a private investigator. It documents your gambling debts. $340,000 owed to various creditors. It documents your bankruptcy filing from January. It documents your attempts to add your name to my house deed without my knowledge. It documents your application for a $500,000 life insurance policy on me, with yourself as beneficiary. Emily grabbed the folder. Her hands shook as she opened it. It also documents, I continued, that you have a one-way ticket to Manila purchased for September 15th, 8 days from now, the day after you told Emily you'd be starting your new business venture in Shanghai. Emily was reading, her face getting whiter with each page. Carlos stood up again. This is insane. Margaret, you've clearly lost your mind. Emily, don't listen to her. It's all true, isn't it? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. She looked up at him. Carlos, tell me it's not true. He didn't answer. Carlos, her voice broke. Tell me you didn't try to take out life insurance on my mother. It was just a precaution. In case something happened. In case something happened? Emily stood up. The folder fell to the floor, pages scattering. You wanted my mother dead. You wanted her house. You married me for money that doesn't exist. That's not... When were you going to tell me about Manila? Her voice was getting louder. People at other tables were staring. When were you going to tell me you were leaving? Carlos looked around, at the other diners, at Patricia's shocked face, at Grace's furious one, at me. Then he switched to Mandarin. Ni jiga lao jian ren huila yi qie. You old bitch, you ruined everything. But, I said calmly. No. Ni ziji huila yi qie. You ruined everything yourself. I stood up. I looked at Emily. I contacted his creditors. 3 weeks ago. I told them everything. His car was repossessed. His accounts were frozen. There are lawsuits pending. He has nowhere to run now. You did what? Carlos lunged toward me. Grace stepped between us. Don't touch her. Get out of my way, you little... Carlos! Emily's voice was ice. Get away from my daughter. Get away from my mother. Get out. Emily, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She picked up the scattered pages. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. I understand that I've been an idiot. I understand that I chose you over my mother. I understand that you used me. I love you. No, you don't. She looked at him, really looked at him. You never did. Carlos stared at her, then at me. Then he turned and walked out of the restaurant. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily sank into her chair. She put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Grace sat down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. Mom, it's okay. It's not okay. Emily's voice was muffled. None of this is okay. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't move. I looked at my daughter, crying at a table covered with food no one was eating. Patricia cleared her throat. Well, I should probably go. Yes, I said. You should." She left quickly without saying goodbye to anyone. Grace looked at me. "Grandma, what happens now?" I sat back down. I picked up my teacup. The tea was cold. "Now," I said, "your mother files for divorce. She gets a lawyer, a good one, and we make sure Carlos doesn't get a single thing he doesn't deserve." Emily looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Mom, I don't have money for a lawyer. I gave him everything." "I know." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. "This is Sarah Kim. She's a family law attorney. She's expecting your call on Monday morning. I already paid her retainer, $8,000. Mom, you can't—" "I can, and I did." I put the card in front of her. "You're still my daughter, Emily. Even after everything." She started crying again. I sat there and watched her cry. I didn't reach out. I didn't comfort her. Not yet. Some wounds needed time to close. The divorce took 4 months. Carlos fought it at first. He claimed emotional distress. He claimed Emily had abandoned him. He claimed I had manipulated everyone. His lawyer dropped him in October when Carlos couldn't pay the retainer. Sarah Kim, Emily's attorney, was efficient and ruthless. She documented everything: the gambling, the debts, the bankruptcy, the attempted fraud with my house deed, the life insurance application. By November, Carlos had signed the papers. He got nothing. Not Emily's car. Not her pension. Not a single dollar. The last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Daly City, working as a dispatcher for a delivery company. His creditors were still chasing him. They'd be chasing him for years. I didn't feel sorry for him. Emily moved back home in October. Not to my house. To a small apartment near Grace's school. She got her old job back at the insurance company. She started seeing a therapist every Thursday. She called me once a week. Always on Sunday mornings. The conversations were short and careful. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm fine. How are you?" "Getting better. Slowly." Sometimes Grace was with her. Sometimes not. Grace came to my house every weekend. She did her homework at the kitchen table while I cooked. She told me about school, about boys, about her college applications. She never mentioned Carlos. In November, Patricia called me. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "Margaret," she said, "I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About what happened. I didn't know Carlos was—" "You knew enough." "That's not fair. I was just trying to help Emily." "By telling me I was selfish? By taking his side?" She was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "Are you sorry you did it? Or sorry you backed the wrong person?" She hung up. I haven't spoken to her since. On Thanksgiving, Emily asked if she and Grace could come over for dinner. I said yes. They arrived at noon. Emily brought wine and a store-bought pumpkin pie. She looked better. She'd gained some weight back. Her eyes were clearer. Grace helped me in the kitchen. Emily sat at the table and watched. "Mom," she said after a while, "can I help with something?" "You can set the table." She stood up. She opened the cabinet where I kept the dishes. She knew exactly where everything was. Of course she did. This was her home for 38 years. We ate at 3 o'clock. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans. I'd made dumplings too. Pork and cabbage, the same ones I'd made for the engagement dinner. Emily took one. She bit into it. She closed her eyes. "I forgot how good these are," she whispered. Grace took 3. "These are the best, Grandma. Way better than anything Carlos ever ate." Emily flinched at his name. After dinner, Grace went upstairs to her old room. Emily and I sat in the living room with tea. "Mom," Emily said, "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I know. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know why I let him, why I believed him over you. He was good at lying. That's not an excuse." She set down her teacup. "I laughed when he insulted you. I took money from your account without asking. I tried to push you out of my life because he told me to. I don't know if you can ever forgive me for that." I looked at my daughter, at the gray hairs starting to show at her temples, at the lines around her eyes, at the wedding ring that was no longer on her finger. "I don't know either," I said honestly. She nodded. "That's fair. But I'm willing to try, if you are." Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, please, I want to try. It's going to take time. I know. And you need to understand something, Emily. I will always be your mother, but I won't always say yes. I won't always agree with you, and I will never, ever let someone treat me the way Carlos treated me. Not even you. I understand." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, a car drove by. The clock on the wall ticked. Everything was familiar and strange at the same time. "Grace wants to live with you," Emily said quietly. "Next year, when she goes to Berkeley. She wants to stay here instead of in the dorms." "What do you want?" "I want her to be happy and safe and loved." She looked at me. "She's always been those things here. She can stay as long as she wants." "Thank you, Mom." Grace came back downstairs with a photo album. "Grandma, can we look at these? The old ones from when Mom was little?" We sat on the couch, all three of us, Grace in the middle. We looked at photos of Emily as a baby, as a toddler, as a gap-toothed 7-year-old. Emily laughed at her old haircuts. Grace asked questions about people she'd never met. When they left at 8, Emily hugged me at the door. It was brief and awkward, but it was a start. "Can we come back next week?" she asked. "Yes." After they drove away, I stood on the porch. The jasmine plant had stopped blooming for the season. The street was quiet. The November air was cold. I went back inside. I washed the dishes. I put away the leftovers. I wiped down the kitchen table where 3 generations of women had sat today. Then I went to Robert's desk and pulled out the notebook with all his old contacts. I'd been thinking about something David Wong had said, about being careful, about desperate people doing desperate things. I opened my laptop. I drafted an email to my attorney. I wanted my will updated. Everything to Emily, but in a trust that Carlos could never touch. Even if something happened to me tomorrow, he wouldn't get a single dollar. I scheduled the appointment for Monday. Then I opened a new document. I started writing everything that had happened, every insult, every manipulation, every lie. I wrote about the dumplings and the crossed-out invitation and the $800 stolen from my account. I didn't know what I'd do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe someday I'd show it to Emily when she was ready to really understand. Or maybe I'd just keep it for myself, evidence that I'd survived. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Grace. "Thank you for today, Grandma. I love you." I typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart." Another text came through. This one from Emily. "Thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "One day at a time." She responded immediately, "One day at a time." I set down the phone. I turned off the lights. I climbed the stairs, stepping over the 3rd step that still creaked after all these years. In my bedroom, I looked at the photo on my nightstand. Robert and me on our wedding day 42 years ago. We were so young, so certain that love and hard work were enough. "I did it," I whispered to the photo. I protected her, even from herself. The house settled around me. The clock ticked. Outside, San Francisco breathed in the darkness. I got into bed. For the first time in 8 months, I fell asleep without thinking about Carlos's voice, or Emily's laughter, or the words "old sow" ringing in my ears. I just slept. And in the morning, I would wake up in my house on Waverly Street, the house no one could take from me, and I would decide what came next. Because that's what survivors do. They keep deciding. They keep going. One day at a time. What would you have done in Margaret's place? Would you have forgiven Emily? Share your thoughts below.